Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Kind of want to show you what I'm growing in the grow tent here over the winter, some of the ideas behind it, and why I'm growing a giant pumpkin plant indoors over the winter. So stay tuned and we'll get into it. So the first thing is that this is a clone. So it's a cutting from 2560 ginger. It's a plant that I grew this year. I actually grew two plants, and one of them produced a new Kentucky state record for me. The pumpkin itself was 1,986 pounds and went heavy to chart. So depending on the measurement you came up with, I think it officially was somewhere around 14 to 18% heavy. But nonetheless, it was definitely a thick, heavy fruit. It was orange, and it was large for the state of Kentucky. So wanted to carry those genetics on. Another reason to do a clone is because the cross that you made with the particular pumpkin, so the father, the pollinator, may not have produced what you wanted to, or maybe genetically there was something that you didn't like about the cross after you made it. Maybe you didn't have pollen available from anything else, and you wanted to make sure that you had a pumpkin on the scale, so you just crossed it with something. But now you can clean up the genetics knowing that the mother plant was a good producer. So what happened with this one was the plant that I pollinated this with, and I am going to kind of stipulate that I'm not bad mouthing any genetics, but just some genetics across the board are going to have seeds that just don't produce up to the potential of the parents. So I'm going to stipulate with that. So this particular cross that produced my state record, the 2560 ginger, I ended up crossing the 1707.5 Caspers into it. My particular seed that I grew of the Caspers grew a fantastic plant, large plant. However, the pumpkins that it was producing along the way, every time I would try and pollinate them or get them growing, they had weird shapes, weird ribbing, and just could not get a good shape or aggressive pumpkin to grow on it. So I didn't want to cross that into it, but that's the pollen I had at the time, and you just don't know until things start to grow out. So I did not collect the seeds from the state record. I ended up selling the pumpkin to Dollywood, and did not retrieve the seeds. I didn't have anybody close enough even to try and get it out, and by the time I was able to find somebody who could, the pumpkin was already composted or destroyed by Dollywood. So was not able to get those seeds, which, you know, it doesn't hurt me as far as that goes, but if there were potential growers who wanted to try that cross, you know, it would have been good for them, or the clubs. Those seeds could have helped fund them. So but with that being said, this 2560 I've had growing in the clone, have growing in the grow tent for approximately 4 to 6 weeks now, I believe. So what I have done is, this is actually the third pot. That's the third pot. That was the second pot, and the first initial cloning pot I have since removed. I removed it because it had more native soil to it, so I was trying to adjust the plant to what it originally came from. I'll show you pictures along the way and what I did, but I took a cutting from the plant before the first frost, and I got one that had some roots on it, or some nodes that were rooting, and I put them in water and got some decent roots to grow out of it, and then put it in more or less the native soil that was in the patch. But with that comes different things. It comes, you know, diseases and bugs and all that stuff. So I had to slowly wean these plants, or this plant, away from that. And so the way that I did that is, I took that cutting, I planted it in that soil, and once it started to grow and progress, I slowly added pots to nodes that were aggressive with roots that were starting to come down. Keeping the humidity level when you're doing this process up is great. So if you have an area in which is naturally humid, fantastic. If not, you may have to add a humidifier, and you can put that on some type of automation. I have these Govee sensors which have humidity sensing ability, and so you can hook them up to outlets that are for Govees and have that humidity kick on and off at a certain level that you'd like. Fortunately enough, my grow tent and how often I watered or misted or things like that, it kept the humidity up high enough to where I was getting tap roots that were coming down from the nodes, but I didn't want it so high because when you bring these plants in, like I said, disease and pests and all that stuff, I didn't want fungal and other spores to spread. The older leaves, and I'll show pictures, had powdery mildew towards the end of the season that I had not treated. Like I said, I didn't anticipate really making a cutting, and then kind of decided last minute that I was going to. So once I got it inside and got a root system established, I did end up treating the earlier leaves with Ridamil Gold. I did it per the recommendations. However, with this being an indoor grow, I think that was a bit much, because I did get, after a few days, some splotching, leaching of color, and then some drying and dying edges. Now, don't get me wrong, it did the job. It killed off the powdery mildew, and so it did what it was supposed to. But I think definitely being indoors and under the lights as close as they are, it did cause some damage to the leaves. So things to learn from in the future is probably maybe a half dose to start, and maybe work as a progression versus just knocking it all at one time with a regular dose. Moving along from that, like I said, I have tap roots that have come down. Both of these have tap roots that I have inspected, so I missed those tap root areas daily, just to keep that area aggressive with moisture and getting the roots to really go down and continue to grow. One of the things that I did add were these EcoSmart sensor, or EcoWits, I believe is what they're called. So EcoWits sensors, and they monitor the moisture level inside the soil. So keeping a consistent moisture level, or at least within a reasonable balance, is important when you're trying to develop young roots, especially not overwatering, because you can do that really easy early on, especially when you get a taproot. You get super excited that you have a taproot, and then you just water the bejesus out of it, and it's too wet, and then you get a root rot, and you just destroy those roots. So I have found that kind of peaking the percentages out at 50 as I water, and then letting them drop down to around the low 30s is a good zone to keep these at with this particular soil mix. The soil mix that I'm using is black gold potting mix. I believe the one that I have is actually the natural organics, so it's got a little bit of something in it as far as fertilizer or nutrient levels, but not so strong that it does anything crazy. The leaves are okay as far as when they come out, but I do hit them with a touch of CalMag, and I have given them a little micronutrient blend as well. So I would have preferred probably a higher light intensity and putting these down on the floor instead of up on this table. Reason being is I have to move these as this plant grows, and that could cause a taproot to break and disturbances, and then it's just a pain. So more likely, when I'm able to cut this section free, which I do have a taproot here, so it should be soon, I will take this table out and I will move this to the floor, so I can almost grow around the floor in a circle and just kind of run it like a train so that it's going around the perimeter and kind of just going pot to pot. I wanted to keep this plant as aggressive as possible without outgrowing the constraints of the tent or the pots. So, yes, I am watering, I am fertilizing, but it's all very small amounts. I know in the past, I want to give credit where credit is due, but I know that a few people who have done clones, they have kind of minimalized the nutrients that they have given to kind of slow things down, and kind of almost underfed, or have underfed them, starved them to a bit just to barely keep them alive. And the reason that is important is because we're really not trying to grow the most aggressive and superb plant right now. You're just trying to keep it alive until spring, keep it as healthy as possible. But what I have done to kind of minimize the growth is a couple different things. Is reduction of temperature. So the maximum temperature that I keep the grow tent at is about 70 degrees, which is still fairly warm, but it dips down to about 65 for the majority of the time. So it could probably go a little bit lower, but right now I'm seeing a steady growth, but nothing that's too crazy. What I also did is I deadheaded the main growing tip once it got established, and once I've gotten to secondaries. Now this is quite a few. This was probably a tertiary vine originally, but just for all intents and purposes, we'll call that the main vine right now, and then these are tertiaries, or secondaries, excuse me. So main vine and secondaries coming off. So what I'll do is I'll allow those to grow, and I'll then try and root both of them, and then whichever one takes hold, great. If they both take hold, then I'll be able to separate it between those two nodes, grow a pot, and then get rid of this old stuff. And I'll continue to do that. So what you're trying to do is just continue the genetic lineage throughout the winter time. You're not trying to grow this massive plant. You're just trying to keep a fairly healthy and aggressive clone going. I hope to, closer to springtime, create multiple healthy clones so that I have something to choose from, or I can double plant in case something goes wrong. And I will slowly ramp up their feedings and their aggressiveness towards that time. So, but until then, it's doing what it's supposed to. It's staying alive. It's producing shoots. It's minimally stressed as far as it's going right now, minus the spray damage. I am seeing some flowering, but that's just because I'm adding a little bit of a balanced nutrients plus what's in that potting mix. I'm also, like I said, I've been trying to clean my tools, spray down things with hydrogen peroxide. I've been doing that with the walls, because when I did bring it in, and I do have the air flowing in here, you could spread those spores. So other than that, it's pretty much it. I have the lights turned down. I believe the light on the left is only at about 30%. So this one's at 30%, and this one's actually less. And so I'm only giving them, a minimum amount of light. Again, I'm just trying to slow down their systems a little bit, keep them moving, but I don't need any crazy growth. This here was the main vine growing tip. Looks pretty rough right now, but what I'm doing is I cut it back, cut off the bigger leaves. They were similar size to this. Reduction of the foliage, and then I have it sitting in water there. And again, I have this light turned down. I think it's probably like 15 to 18%, and I have it leaned away from that light. So it's still getting some light, but it's not getting very intense light. And hopefully within a few days, it'll be able to throw a couple of roots down at the nodes, and I can pot that as well. If you have any questions or comments on this, feel free to ask. I'll answer the best I can. This is the first time I've done this long of a test on growing a cutting, and it'll be the first time I'm gonna grow a cutting for competition purposes. More than likely this plant will only get a maximum of probably 500 square feet. Again, it's more of a genetics thing, and see how it does. I don't know if it'll grow a crazy huge pumpkin or not, but I'm hoping that it'll produce something at least fairly genetically similar to its mother, and I can make a good cross into it. So one thing I wanted to bring up before I sign off for this video is I'm not using anything as far as rooting hormones or other hormones that could help aid in the process of these cuttings producing roots or shoots or whatnot. The reason I'm not doing that is because I don't want to change or tweak or turn on and off switches for the plant. I really like the way that the plant grew, and I like the way that the fruit grew. And not that scientifically speaking, what I'm about to say is accurate, but just kind of my mindset behind not using any hormones is that by adjusting the plant's ability to turn those switches on and off by themselves, and me artificially doing it, I don't want that to affect the plant's ability to do it. Just my thinking of is when we take medicine for ourselves, whether it be for headaches or antibiotics or anything like that, we become either dependent on, or our body changes the way that it reacts to it over the course of time. And if I give it something that is altering its natural ability or its natural way to turn those certain switches on and off, it could change the way that this plant grows for me during the course of the season. So I want to kind of just use as best as I can, whether it be through the lights or through fertilizer or its normal growth patterns, for it to create its roots and shoots on its own and continue its aggressiveness and vigor that the plant naturally has with it. So just my mindset behind it, and just in case that was a question as far as, hey, are you using anything such as a Clonex or a rooting hormone or anything like that? I'm trying to avoid that, and that's kind of my thought process behind it. Thanks for watching, and catch you guys on the next one.